Hello, everyone. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the the residency program series for the Texas A&M Dermatology Interest Group podcast. We're excited to welcome on the show today Dr. Helen Chen. She is a current resident at Texas Tech University in sunny Lubbock, Texas. Um, Dr. Chen, tell us about yourself.
Thank you, Jake, for that introduction. So a little bit more about me. I grew up with three brothers, and I think I always knew I wanted to do medicine from like a really young age. And so going into med school, I was someone who was pretty undecided. I liked almost everything I rotated in except for, I'd say, like surgery and OBGYN. And so picking dermatology ended up being kind of difficult, and I didn't do that until late into my third year. But I'm so glad I'm in it. I'm just about to finish my first year here at Texas Tech, and I love it. It's so fun getting to do what you've always wanted to do. And so I feel like I'm making a really big difference in people's lives.
Congratulations on basically finishing your first year. So you'll be a PGY 3 in what, a
Mhm.
week? Yeah,
In a week, yes.
great. Congratulations. So where did you originally grow up and where did you do undergrad med school? Do you do research year, intern year? That
Yeah, so I actually grew up in like really South Texas. I'm one of the border cities, so it's Mission, Texas. And I grew up all the way there until like through high school. And then I went to Texas A&M for both undergrad and med school. At Texas A&M, my undergrad major was like biomedical science, and I did like a research track then, but I never did a research year between undergrad and med school, as well as med school to dermatology residency. Yes.
great. And then intern year?
And then intern year, I did mine in internal medicine at Baylor University Medical Center in Dallas, and I absolutely would recommend that 1,000 times over. I felt like I was really prepared coming into dermatology. A lot of people say the first year doesn't really matter, and I think to an extent it kind of does. I think it sets like the baseline of your work ethic. And I just had such a good time. I learned so many different skills that I think are transferable into dermatology.
That's great. Yes, I've had the opportunity to do a medical school rotation at University Medical Center, and it's been a good experience. So I agree. So the next question I have is, what are your interests outside of dermatology? You mentioned some siblings.
Yes, so I love hanging out with my siblings, but the main thing we like to do is actually board games with them. And so my favorite one, we play Dune quite a bit, and then I love Terraforming Mars. Outside of board games, I also really like Switch games. So me and my significant other, John, he loves to play Switch games. So we're like making pizzas, playing Kirby, stuff like that. And then we also got into gardening this year. So we have our first garden. And so we've been like making like tomatoes and like basil. So it's nice for that. I think I'm trying to get more into outdoor activity. I used to be more active when I lived in the College Station area. And now that I'm here in Lubbock, there's actually a lot of hiking places nearby. So I actually do that when the weather's good.
That's great. That's good to hear. That there's some stuff outside out there, and it's not just hot.
No, yeah, there's actually surprisingly, if you're like a Texan, so we're always known for our really hot summers and then our like milder like winters. We're not really known for snow or anything like that. But in Lubbock, there's snow and also it doesn't get super hot. So like I think 90s is when we consider it really hot here in Lubbock. But I grew up in the Rio Grande Valley where the temperature is like 110 during the summer. So it's way better of temperature wise than what
Yeah.
I'm used to.
Well, that's great. Okay, that's good to because that kind of leads into my next question is like, tell me a little bit more about Lubbock and the other location, like the hospitals that you work at and
Yeah.
residents, faculty, that kind of thing.
So Lubbock is a college town. There's the Texas Tech University here, and so a lot of like I would say like the third of the population here is like college students, which is nice because during the summer times and like the holidays, there's less people, less traffic. Although there's really not much traffic in Lubbock. I'd say if you're into outdoor stuff, Lubbock is good. There's a nice like biking trail here as well as Palo Duro is like an hour drive outside of Lubbock, and that's like one of the main like Texas like hikes here. And the other thing I'd say is if you're into like farmer markets and whatnot, Lubbock does host like a really nice farmer market as well as an arts festival like once the first Friday of every month. So that is like really, really what I like to make sure I attend. As far as like the campus itself, it's actually really nearby. We have two sites really. There's VA and then there's a Texas like Health Science Center site. So the VA site is actually right across the street from the Health Science site. So some days, depending on how lazy I want to be, I'll like drive, but I'll also walk across the street if I'm like short on time because it's actually faster to walk there than to walk to the parking lot and then drive. But really, you don't waste any time, actually. It's really nice having your sites close by. I'd say that is like 95% of the time where you're at. There are other outside like clinics that we rotate at. So there's like a laser clinic, we will do podiatry, and then there's also like another private practice, like Mohs surgeon clinic, we also rotate at. But those are, I think, even from the health science center, maybe it's like a 10-minute drive max. So like everything's really close by. A lot of times our schedule will have it where we're a half day at one site, half day at the other, and there's really no risk of us like not making it to the other site.
That's great. That's good to hear. So how many residents do you guys have? Do you take every year?
So on average, 3 residents every year, so that there's a total of 9 residents.
Great. And how many faculty do you have for those residents?
So right now we have currently 2 faculty, but we're actually signing on 2 new faculty. And so they're starting in the fall. So it's going to be a total of 4. There'll be 2 derm path trained, actually 3 derm path trained, I apologize. And then one of them is going to be a Mohs surgeon trained, like fellowship accredited. And then we have our private attending. So that will be like 2 or 3 private attendings. But we're having a lot more faculty than before. So I don't think our website reflects that yet. But they're all starting in the fall.
Great. Yes, so you're associated with Texas Tech Medical
Mhm.
School. Are you associated with any fellowships? Are there any fellowships there?
Yeah, so there is one Mohs surgery fellowship. It's with Dr. Aiken out in Midland, and it's like half Midland, half here at Texas Tech. Um, it is like fully accredited. We just haven't had a fellow in a little bit, but that might change this year. We have 2 upcoming like senior residents who are interested in Mohs, and so we will likely we'll see maybe someone match into it.
Great. Do you have a research fellowship for students that are interested for like a 1 year if they don't, yeah, for if they're taking a break
Mhm.
between
I
residency and med school?
I think classically, we don't. I think we can do a research fellowship, but it's just like not very common here. I know that there was one person, the last research fellow I heard of, that did a tech research fellow, and it's kind of like with the 2 attendings that we had, and then they ended up matching that like upcoming cycle. So like it's not like every year we'll have one. I think if you're interested, definitely I would message our program director, Dr. Tarbox, because she's really into research. Because like if you want to do research, she'd open up a spot.
Okay, that's good. Do you know if your program looks how they look on research years or having a PhD versus just coming straight through? It sounds like you just went straight through undergrad med school.
Yeah, I want to say the majority of us, the residents actually just went straight through. We didn't really take a research year, but that's not to say that if you took a research year, that it would be against you. I think like just in general, like during the application season, having a decent amount of research is impressive. But also for our program itself, we really focus more like clinically. So we're really heavy focus on surgical as well as derm path. And so if you're interested in doing research, there's always avenues to do it. And we are affiliated with the medical school, so there's a ton of research projects that way. But if you're someone who finds, research isn't always your cup of tea, which is fine, everyone has like a certain niche to fill. I think you do fine here at this program. So it's kind of like if you're interested, there's opportunities. If you're not, you can just kind of keep doing clinical stuff, which is important too.
That's good. Do you guys accept DO or international medical students,
Yeah.
IMGs?
So actually, we do accept DO. Currently, one of our residents is a DO student, and then we actually do accept IMGs. One of our upcoming residents actually did a internal medicine residency, and now she is doing dermatology with us. So we do actually take students or people who don't have like funding, or if they've already completed another residency, we'll still take them. Yeah, that's not really like a barrier against for us.
So tell me a little bit more about the structure of your program. Like as far as what do you do PGY 2, 3, 4 year and stuff like that?
Mhm. Yeah, so I will say that our program's a little bit different from the other programs I've rotated in that instead of having like blocks where you do derm path a block or surgery a block where that's all you do for the weeks, we actually have it split up so that the first, second, and third dermatology years are pretty similar with a more focus on more surgical stuff during the second and third year. So as a first year, what we'll do is on average, we'll have either between a half day or to a day and a half of surgery during the week. So that means like clinics will have like 3 to 4 half-day regular clinics, and then we also have like a cosmetic clinics we rotate in, and then lastly a podiatry clinic. So it's pretty, I would say, well-rounded. More so first year you'll have more clinics, and then second and third year you'll have a lot more surgery days. And so I've seen schedules where they do surgery like two and a half like days of just clinics of surgery. So then the clinics are maybe like a day and a half then. And so I think it's just also dependent on the cases we have. Some of the cases are, we're in sunny Lubbock, so we do get a ton of skin cancer, and sometimes it's hard for patients to get in. So by the time we do treat their skin cancers, it's pretty large. And so kind of also depends on skill level, but on average, even like me as a first year, I didn't know anything. I was still on surgery like half a day to a day and a half, which is really important. I think that's like a really big plus of our program, since I've heard that in other programs, you don't actually get to do any like Mohs or surgical training until your second to third derm years. And the reason for that is because they just like to block it off for those second and third years. Yeah.
Well, that's great. Sounds like you have a big surgical volume there.
Yeah, definitely do. I think on average, we are like in the 90th percentile of cases for surgery stuff.
Wow, that's impressive. So do you get any elective experience during your time?
Yeah, so so I would say that during your second derm year, so like PGY 4, you can do electives. So like if you are applying interested in like Mohs or derm path, you can then like rotate elsewhere to do that elective. But I would say most people don't really do it just because I think for the majority of the time we've had more people interested in practice, and so they don't really, we have most of our stuff here, so there's really not an urge for people to want to apply for an elective outside.
Hmm. So along with that, do you rotate on any other services during your derm years?
So during our derm years, so we'll have there's 2 months where of the year you're considered a derm path resident, which means that you'll read derm path every single day, Monday through Friday, and you're also on consults during the day. So that's when we go out into the hospital and we'll see patients. And that is like two months out of the year, I believe. And so it's also where we get to see a lot of our cool cases. We're considered a burn unit, and that means that a lot of patients will get referred to us in like a 500-mile radius just because SJS and TEN rule out and stuff. And so I think our consult volume is great in that we pair it with the derm path rotation so that it's never like overwhelming.
So you told me a little about your clinical sites already. You have a VA and then you have the hospital at Texas Tech. Where do you get pediatric experience?
So the pediatric experience, so we actually have something like called a continuity clinic, which I think a lot of derm residency do have, but ours is unique in that we're also the only people who take like Medicaid and Medicare in a 500-mile radius. So a lot of our pediatrics that have like incontinence pigmenti and the rare genoderms will go through our continuity clinics. And since the continuity clinic is based off the resident, you actually follow them through your 3 years. And so that's where our majority of our pediatrics like experience come from for the more rare things. Of course, during our regular clinics, we still have like the bread and butter, like the molluscum, like acne, stuff like that. But I'd say that continuity clinic is really where the pediatric stuff shines.
Great. Well, that answered one of the later questions, so that's good. Continuity clinic, you guys do have one, and it sounds like it's very, very helpful.
It is, and I'll say that we also have a really good load. So, um, a lot of the reasons I think that our graduates go out to private practice is that during their continuity clinic, they see like up to like 20-ish patients in a half day, which is a very high volume. But I think that just sets you up really well for private practice, where on average, I'd say dermatologists will be let's seeing 30 to 40 patients a day. And so I think it makes you really grow as a resident during those periods.
That's great. So do you have training sites just to confirm, I guess? Do you have training sites at other locations and how far away are these locations? Do you have to go to, I know you mentioned Midland for the
Yeah.
Mo's. Do you ever go to like any of these other surrounding cities?
So the Midland rotation is only if you're interested in I think applying a Mohs surgery because then you'll go out to meet with Dr. Aiken. But other than that, our sites are here at Lubbock. So the max amount you drive to the private satellite clinics would be 10 minutes.
Oh, great. Okay.
The city
So
of Lubbock is not very big. I think you can go from one side to the other side in 20 minutes, like from the farthest tip. So it's not it you if you're worried about driving, that's not the one of the concerns here in Lubbock.
great. So it sounds like it's a true college town then.
Yes, true college town.
So what would you say are some of the strengths of your program?
I think I touched on it a little bit earlier, but I really do think our surgery is really fantastic. So I won't go more into details about that because you've heard quite a bit. We do Mohs, we do excisions, we do a bunch of things. We do cosmetics, which in some programs there's not like an emphasis on, but nice to learn how to work with Botox fillers, lasers, sclerotherapy. So I think it brings out a pretty well-rounded dermatology. But I want to say the other really big thing that we have as a strength is our derm paths training. We actually are taught by Dr. Stetson, who trained under Dr. Rapini. And if you know anything about the derm world, he's like super, super famous. He wrote one of the derm path textbooks that like I have his textbooks right next to me that we'll study from. And so it's great getting training from someone who trained under that person. So I think that's like a huge perk of our program. And we'll get lectures Monday and Friday for derm path as well as Thursday lectures. So I think those two are really our big strengths. So yeah.
That's great. I mean, so you kind of alluded this. I'm going to jump a little bit to a future question. What is your didactic schedule like? You kind of mentioned some lectures throughout the week.
Yes. So Monday morning, so we have lectures Tuesday morning and Friday morning. We'll have lectures 8 to 9, and then clinic starts at 9. And then Thursdays are our half day didactic days. So derm press starts at 8 to 9, and then depending on the schedule, we'll have either grand rounds or practicals like Botox or fillers or like new things for cosmetic practicals we'll do during that time spot. And then with the advent of our two new faculty, we might get some more specific lectures that one of our faculty has an interest in sports dermatology. So I think we might get some lectures on that. And then the other faculty is most trained. And so I'm expecting some more lectures on kind of how to do flaps, graphs, stuff like that.
Interesting. That's great. Okay,
Mhm.
so backpedaling back to we were talking about strengths. So now I'm going to ask like what areas of improvement is your program working on?
So I think one of our bigger weaknesses that we had was just not having enough faculty. We have two like tremendous faculty and they really do like the job of like a million attendings, it feels like. But I think it's in dermatology, especially, it's really important to get different perspectives because it's not like a cut and dry. There are different treatments for different things, and so you learn new things when you have different perspectives. And so I think adding two new faculty is going to be a huge plus. I think the other thing that we could improve on is being able to recruit a pediatric derm trained. I know those are very, very hard to get and very rare. And usually it's affiliated with big academic centers. So I think that's part of the difficulty is getting someone to come to Lubbock. But I think if you were, it would really like make us super well-rounded. Yeah.
Great. So we already talked a little about surgery. We won't go into that anymore, and you mentioned some cosmetics. Does it mostly just happen in your continuity clinic and then in your it was half days on Thursdays, if I remember right?
Yeah,
And
half
when
days on
else?
Thursday.
Yeah, when else do you get training in cosmetics?
So we have the practicals, which are on Thursdays. We have the every week we have a cosmetic clinics on Thursday afternoon, and then between that, it's kind of just sporadic. So if you want to learn a new technique or um there's like cosmetic conferences in Texas. And so sometimes what will happen is that a couple of our residents will go to that and then we'll bring back new skills and then we'll have like an extra practical just because of that. And it'll be like during lunchtime. And it's just like for those who are interested in that, if you're not interested in cosmetics, it's not like mandatory for you to show up.
So, we already kind of talked about the continuity clinic as well. Do you participate in that as a PGY 2 to 4, or is that only for seniors?
So classically, we have it where it's only PG, so second and third term years, but we're actually trying to revamp it. And so this new change might be out in the coming year or two, where it'll be first term year through third years. And the only reason to extend it to the first years, I think it really helps breed more confidence in patient care, and it really lets you be like the owner of your patients. And so that's kind of why we're trying to make it. There's still some new changes since we're adding new attendings. The schedule is still not in set in stone, I'd say. So there's still a lot of opportunity for it to be changed. But for now, we have it where it's only at the second and third years who do the continuity clinics. Yeah.
So it sounds like it may come earlier by the time some of us get there.
Exactly. Mhm.
Sounds good. Um, are there any global health opportunities with your program?
Like, you mean traveling to like other like cities or countries to do
Sure.
like
Or
dermatology?
yeah, or even like putting together some global health things. What like yeah, you can interpret that how you want, I guess.
Yeah. I think I don't know if there's really been a resident that has been really interested in global health. And so I don't think there has, at least to my knowledge, been like someone who's traveled abroad to do derm or like to set up global health stuff. But I think part of what makes this program really nice is that you can actually tailor your interests to things that you want to do. So I don't see why there wouldn't be an opportunity if you're interested in that. Because we do get quite a bit of help from the Texas Tech just like medical school. And so there's a lot of like partnerships along that. There's also like interdisciplinary partnerships with like other like specialties like surgery with the burn and stuff. And so I think if you have an interest in global like health and stuff is your interest, I don't think like you'd be detained from not being able to do it, but I just haven't met a resident who's interested in that yet at this point.
Yeah. So how much autonomy do you get as residents?
In terms of learning, I think ours is we get quite a bit actually. So I would say in the beginning, you're usually kind of paired off with a senior or upper level. So at the VA, you'll kind of see patients with them just until you get your foot kind of underhand and kind of understand the system. And then while you're in surgery, it's kind of the same. So there's a lot of like resident to resident teaching when it comes to surgery. And I think that it's very graduated, meaning that in the beginning, you're kind of watched closely just to make sure that like everyone comes in with different skills. So like I came into dermatologist, like I not suturing a ton, I did internal medicine. So it's like we do art lines and like central lines. We don't really do any biopsies or anything like that. So I think because they kind of like have a graduate autonomy and they watch you, you kind of get let go at I would say around the month mark. They kind of feel more comfortable in like what you're able to do. And oftentimes a lot of the surgical stuff, like they'll be like right next door, but they'll kind of let you decide like, hey, I want to close it this way. What are your thoughts? They'll let you draw like the O to T and see like and like they'll just say, yeah, I do that, or no, like this is how I'd probably do it. And so I think because of that, you kind of test like if what you do is, like would be right. And so even I say that's really you get a lot of autonomy during surgery because you can plan how you want to do things. You get quite a bit of autonomy during passes. So we'll read first and then we'll read with the attendings to see like, hey, I would have called this and this is the reason why. So I think this program really is really important, I would say, to be a self-learner because a lot of the things that you learn, it's not necessarily through lectures and whatnot. It's more of like through your upper levels and like just learning about it. And so like for us, we can see the cases posted like weeks in advance. And so if I know I'm gonna be on surgery, I'll like look at the cases and I'll be like, hey, I kind of want to do this as like a closure. I've never done this before. So then you'll kind of learn it and you'll let your attending know. And if they think, hey, it's a great idea, then you get to do it. So I think that's what's really nice about it.
Sounds like there's a lot of hands-on learning. That's great.
Yeah,
Um,
exactly.
sorry, I think there may have been a problem with the connection. What month did you say you end up getting more
Oh yeah,
service?
like the
Yeah,
third or fourth month
third or
is
fourth month.
I think
Great.
when you're less watched like super closely. And I think this is true of most VAs, but at least for our VA, like at the third or fourth month mark, we'll actually just start seeing patients on our own, meaning that we don't have to check up to attending. Of course, like if you get a rare case or a case where you have no idea, like the attending's right next door, you can bring them in at any point. And so I think that also helps to gauge like your comfort level of certain treatments and whatnot. And so that's like where you get a decent amount of the too.
Great. How does call and consult service work? You mentioned like 2 months of the year. I assume that changes
Yeah.
and as you go through.
Yeah, so the consult month is I think 2 months of the year for the second and third year derm residents, but the regular call we all take participate in call. So the first, second, and third years will all take call, and on average it's around 6 weeks of call. So it's not very heavy. We take call a week at a time, so like from Tuesday to the next Tuesday, and the call time technically starts I think 5 p.m. to the next day at like 7 or 8 a.m. But we're not very heavily called. Most of the times, the other services will actually like hold off until the daytime to call us in, unless it's like SJS where you have to come in that day, like at that moment. But I'd say on average, on a heavy week, I've been called maybe like 3 or 4 times during the week, and on a light week, I've been called zero. So it's not a very heavy call. So those are the 6 weeks of call. And then the consult months is a little bit different because since they like to save their consults for the day, I haven't done my consult month yet, but just holding the pager a couple of times to sub in for the upper levels. I'd say we do get called like maybe 2 or 3 times like during the day for new consults, and that's just because you get like just during path, and so you can see it, so it's like built into the schedule. So none of the residents who take consult months are staying after 5 is what I'm trying to say.
Great. Yeah. Sounds like they respect your time
Yeah,
making the
exactly.
schedule like that. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit more. You talked a little about research and that there's opportunities for it. I know a lot of programs have research requirements. Do you have a research requirement at your institution?
Yeah, so we do have a research requirement. On average, they want us to do like a publication or a presentation once a year to either like AAD or like TDS or any of the local conferences we have. And then we have a quality improvement project as well that's mandatory. But outside of that, you can do as much as you want or you can do as little as you want. So we had a recent senior who like matched the most, and so she did a ton of research, like several publications throughout the year, but you can also not do it if you're not interested in that, if that makes sense.
Is there like financial support for going to conferences or for
Yeah.
publications or even grants?
So definitely for publications, there is financial support. So I know that in some of the places like JAD case reports and whatnot, it's like $1,000 to like get it published. Our like department does pay for it. So like if you get published, money isn't the reason why it's not getting published, if that makes sense. So
Mhm.
like the department will pay for it. As far as conferences, we do get a really generous conference budget. I don't know if I can tell, but it's very generous to the point where like going to conferences, like I'm not really worried about the price per se because we get refunded all of it back. But I
Great,
don't think I
great.
can talk about the number.
Yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's totally fine. I think that you said enough to get the idea that like you're
Yeah.
not worried when you go to conferences. You
Yeah,
don't have
not
to pay your
worried.
own money. Okay,
So yeah, it's great actually. I think going to conferences is a really important part of being like up to date in like derm and stuff. And so I think that's a really good bonding experience also with your co-residents.
great. So we talked a little bit about some didactic time. Do you have any dedicated and protected time for studying or for research?
So the protected time kind of fluctuates based off of the attending schedule. So I don't know how it be with the two new attendings. Currently, right now, I'd say on average, as a first year, you might get maybe half day library or projected time like once 1 or 2 months. But the seniors get more, and the only reason for that is there's board prep for them, and so they might get 2 to 4 library half day libraries in a month. And of course, like you get more if an attending is out. And so we'll have weeks where like one attending's out for a whole week and then the following week it's the other attending. And so then you'll get much more protected time because there's not clinic spots to fill. So I don't know how it will look with the two new attendings.
Okay, so it sounds like there's some changes, but there is some protected time.
Yeah, like right now we do have protected time for studying and whatnot.
Mhm. So tell us a little bit more about the faculty that I guess are already there, and you can tell us what you know about the faculty that are coming and the program
Yeah.
leadership.
So we have Dr. Stetson, he is our derm path trained and he also does Mohs. And so he's really him and Dr. Tarbox are really our core faculty. We're with them like half with one, half with the other. And so they both kind of have their different teaching styles. Dr. Stetson is he's very he's so like knowledgeable and he loves to teach by asking questions. And so if you come to rotate with us, expect a lot of questions because he really feels like you learn best if you get things wrong, I feel like. And so I always learn when I'm with him on clinic. Dr. Tarbox, she's more someone who likes to teach by showing. And so whenever we're in the room and there's an interesting finding with a patient, she'll kind of go out of her way to be like, hey, this is like super interesting and like this is what's associated with it, like genodermatosis wise. And I think having those two different types of teaching styles is really helpful. Um, I will say both of them do kind of similar stuff since both are path trained and they're both do still do modes. We just do it with them at different schedule times. I will say that Dr. Stetson I think does more of the derm path reading. So when you're on the consult service, you're with him for longer. And then the two new upcoming attendings. It's gonna be um can't remember the last name of one of them, but her first name is like Dr. Alba, but she's the most fellowship trained. She is just graduated out of fellowship and she's coming to our program. So it's gonna be really exciting. We hope to keep her for a long time. And then the other person is Dr. West, who actually went to Texas Tech, like as a derm residency. So he's familiar with this area. And so his interests are in telemedicine as well as sports derm medicine. So I think he'll do a little bit of both. And then I never brought this up earlier, but we actually also help out with the prison population here in Lubbock. So one of our telehealth is actually with the prison service.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That sounds really unique.
It is really helpful because I think at least in dermatology, I feel like new medications are always coming out, which is wonderful. Like we have all these amazing biologics, but like learning how to work within a patient population that doesn't get a lot of like medication support or like financial support is really helpful because I think it will kind of get you ready for private practice where you have a mix of people who, you have to work with the older drugs like methotrexate and stuff like that versus the newer ones on the market.
Hmm. Yeah, that's great. Like, sounds like a good experience.
Yes,
Um,
definitely very good experience.
yeah. So, going back to more the leadership, what we were talking about with the program leadership and faculty, how receptive are they to feedback? It sounds like you've already talked to them about the continuity clinic and getting that changed.
Yeah, I'd say that they're pretty receptive to feedback. And so we actually at one point had another rotation called an like an STI clinic where you kind of treat a lot of STIs coming in. But we had that, we actually see quite a bit of STIs at the VA clinic and just like in general clinic. We are like a college town. And so we had said that like I don't know if this is the best use of time for like an additional clinic where we just focus on that. And they heard our feedback and now it's like no longer a rotation and said we get something that's more beneficial. So like either a surgery clinic or a regular clinic. So something, so I feel like in general they are receptive to feedback on things that are possible to change. So like that was an easy fix if that made sense.
Well, that's great. Sounds like you feel like you have enough experience with STIs that you don't have to have a
Yeah, exactly.
yeah.
I think I think just like trying to make our learning as more like, well-rounded as possible is like really important. And so I think they do really try to make it so that we can see a lot of different things.
So my next question has, and you can tell me as much as you feel like you are able to, how much say do the residents have in the interview and match process?
I think that in terms of the match process, if we really like someone, like we can let our program leadership know, and that kind of, I think, gives them a boost. So I think it's like I would say two odds of the spectrum. So you're either like really, really like we really love you as a resident, as the residents love this one person, and I think it gives them a huge boost. Or like the on the opposite side of the spectrum, if you like said something like off-colored or or something inappropriate that happened with a resident, I think we can also like nail in the coffin you. But I think when you're in that like gray zone where it's like you're good. I feel like most people who rotate are good. They're coming through us like you're a derm applicator, like you're super smart, you're like top of your class. You've learned like all these like social cues of like when to say stuff, like when to be helpful. So in general, I think it's hard like in this middle range, but like if you're in this range, it's like a huge boost, and then in this range, it's kind of like oof. But I think that's true of like every away rotation. Like you always have the possibility of looking way better than you did on paper versus vice versa. And I will say a lot of the people who actually match are either away, like would be like people who have rotated here.
That's good to know. That's good information. So, what is the culture of your program like? What are the personalities of the residents of the faculty you talked about a little bit, their interests, etc.?
So, I will say that I think that the culture of our program is a little bit more relaxed. I don't know if it's just because we're in a college town, but everyone is very like easy able to talk to the attendings. Like I feel like I can joke with my attendings. There's really not as much of a hierarchy as maybe in some other programs. Like I joke with my upper levels. And so I think that makes it an easier culture to deal with. If you're someone who likes the hierarchy, we're really formal basically. As far as like the attendings, things that they like, I know Dr. Tarbox is really into, she also has a podcast too with Dr. Johnson, and it's like pretty famous. It's like Dermosphere, and so that's what she'll do on her fun times. But she also has like a wide array of like talents. Like she's very talented. She sings, and she's actually really good too. And then she also does like a lot of acting. So you kind of see her in those like she'll be in plays and whatnot. So that's like the other part. And then both of them really are our like main leadership. So like we could go to one or the other. There's really not like a worry of like you can't talk to either of the attendings, or you have to like book out like a appointment or something to meet with them.
Hmm. So, do residents hang out with each other outside of the clinic?
Yeah, I think it depends on the classes. So I feel like each class has kind of like a different personality, and I don't know if you won't know until you get in it, but at least for my class, me and my co-residents, so we hang out. We went like turtle watching, turtle racing. It's like this thing in Lubbock where turtles race. I know it sounds so dorky, but
Interesting.
it was very fun. It's very fun actually. And then we'll also do the Saturday. We love going to the farmers market Saturday, so we'll do that. And then we'll also we always go to the arts festival every Friday. So like we hang out quite a bit. And then like there's also like in between the classes there'll be like they'll hang out too. Um I think the personality of each class is like just a little bit different. I'd say like some of them are more reserved, and then others will hang out much more. And a little bit part of it also becomes like if you have a co-resident who has a family, it's also hard because like we work. I'm not gonna say we work a lot, because I know that if a surgical specialty heard this, they'd be like, "What are you talking about?" But like the time we have on our free time, we do have to spend like a good chunk studying, and so like hang out. Will usually be like I feel like we hang out more like on the weekends than like during the weekdays because I'm with them like the whole day.
Yeah, yeah, that makes sense. So, do most of your co-residents do they rent or own their living space, whether it's a home or apartment or whatever?
say it's half half actually. So our graduating class, all of them had homes they own, and then I own my home, and then my co-residents they rented, and then the third year, like the second years, they also rented. But I will say that it's very cheap to live in Lubbock, and so um a lot of people do buy their homes here, and like at least where I live, like a lot of the people around me are like other residency like residents basically. So I think if you want to own a home, it'd be very, very possible here.
So that kind of goes into the next question of cost of living. How is it in Lubbock?
It's very cheap, I'll be honest. Compared so I came from like Dallas, and then before that came from Houston. All of it, this is like way cheaper to rent, way cheaper to buy. And you get a lot of land. You won't find a big house like I feel like I have like a 4x2. I don't think I'd be able to get a 4x2 in Houston, or I mean, unless I came from money. I think that's what makes it so nice is that you can have your own home, you can have a whole backyard. It's so cheap, like electricity, water bills are really cheap. I don't think you should be worried about cost of living. Like that's like a huge perk we have. It's cost of living. It's not anything close to like if you lived in a city.
That sounds great.
Yeah, I
Um,
think my co-resident he rents like a house. Maybe it's like four bed. It's big. It's 2 stories. It's like 1,600.
oh
And then
wow.
like I paid like 1,700 for like a micro studio in Houston. So the cost of living is a huge difference.
So it sounds like your money will go a lot farther.
Yes, money will go a long farther.
I know
And then
some,
I forgot to
sorry.
say, we also get a lot of meals catered by drug reps Wednesday and Thursday. So like Wednesdays and Thursdays, and then sometimes Tuesdays. So really like I only buy lunches like Monday and Friday, which is like also cuts down on costs of living.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's great. Is there a housing stipend? Some programs have them.
No, I don't think we have a housing
Okay.
stipend.
Yeah, that's usually a yes or no. Um, and then do most people live, you mentioned Lubbock, you can probably get across in 20 minutes. Do most people live close to the clinic sites?
I'd say so. Like, I think everyone that I know lives within at least a 10-minute radius to the main tech building.
Is it necessary to have a car?
I would say yes, because I don't think you could do public transport very well here. Or I haven't really tried it, but I definitely think you need to have a car just because, mine's a 10-minute drive, but it's like 9 miles away. So I think it'd be really difficult to like travel by bike or something like that.
Yeah. So what's the breakdown of residents being single, married, having kids?
So I will say there was two residents who were single out of the nine. And out of the nine, actually three residents that are single out of the nine, two are married, and then the rest are like like long-term partners and whatnot.
Does your program give any support for like paternity or maternity leave?
We do have like the whole FMLA stuff where you can plan it and get like I think it's 6 weeks off for having a kid. And so we actually had this group of batch of residents, I'd say only my co-resident has a kid, and that's just because none of us want a kid at this point. But the previous upper levels that graduated, there was one that had I think 4 kids throughout the residency cycles, and then like their class had more kids because I guess they wanted more kids. But I think if you want to have a kid, it's very possible. Like we do the whole FMLA, and we would actually change your schedule to like make it so that you don't have to worry about not being with your kid for long. So um, I think it's a very kid-friendly program.
Great. Yeah, that's good to hear. That's kind of what I was asking. Is it kid friendly?
Yeah.
Sounds like it is. Yeah.
Very, yeah. I think like at one point, like when we had a fellow, like she also had a kid during that time. Like they had the people who graduated like above us had a lot more kids,
Hmm.
but they were all like married and stuff. So I think that also like,
Yeah.
plays
Yeah.
a role in it.
Hmm. So how can applicants or people interested find out more about your program?
I think the best way is actually like through rotation, which I know is kind of hard because every year they have like a new thing that comes out with like how many times they can rotate and whatnot, and we never know if another pandemic is going to hit us. But I say if you can have the opportunity to rotate, I think you'll learn more about this program just through like daily, because you get to actually rotate through everything we do, and you can see if like this is the type of learning style that fits me. Do I mesh well with the attendings? Is this the kind of environment I want to be in for the next 3 years? Do I like kind of a quieter area to live in? No traffic? Do I prefer a city lifestyle? I think all of these are important factors to consider when you're choosing someplace, because like 3 years is like a big part of your life, I'd say, especially in your like 20s to 30s. This is like your pivotal moments in life. So I would definitely recommend like rotating. And if you can't rotate, I would say a lot of the residents are really open to like just talking. So if you have questions, I'd say on interview nights and whatnot, just reach out and just say, hey, I'd like to talk a little bit more. I have a few more questions about X, Y, and Z. And I think the residents would be really open to like talking about those too.
That's great. So it sounds like talking to residents is good, and then if you can do an away rotation, that would be like that's the
Exactly.
most ideal. Mhm.
I think that would be, I really think that you learn like what places you feel comfortable living in and like what places you feel like, because like sometimes if you don't rotate, you really don't know how a program is, and what they are on paper is not always what they seem like in person, if that makes
Mhm.
sense.
Yeah, that does make sense. So, what advice do you have for medical students interested in dermatology?
I'd say really one thing is just like being a hard worker. It really goes far. So like for the first 2 years, I know with like the whole step one going to pass fail, I think it's so really important to have like a good foundation base. Um if you can try to be able to do some research during your first and second years. But if you find that it's hard to balance schoolwork and research, I'd say prioritize your schoolwork during the first 2 years. Get your base down. That way, when you start rotations, you can really shine. I feel like in dermatology, they really like people who have honored, and it's not just means you're at the top of your class, but I think it also shows that you're someone who likes to go above and beyond. And that's kind of like what we look for. We look for characteristic traits where you don't have to know anything. Like I don't expect any of the people who come in to know derm stuff. I'm be super impressed if you did, but I wouldn't expect it. And it's just kind of how well you're willing to learn. Because I will say what I thought I learned of dermatology in med school is like so small. It's like 0.005% of what you learn when you're like a derm resident. And so I think that's why it's like showing like characteristics of the hard worker, you're a team player, you're someone who's willing to stay late. That tells me like, hey, you're like one of the homies, if that makes sense. Like you're not gonna let your co-resident drown while you go back home and like, go golfing or something. I think that shows a lot of character, and that I think will take you farther. So don't I feel like a lot of medical students do worry about like when they do their away rotations, like if they need to know a lot of stuff. Honestly, I say if you know the AAD modules like down, you're gonna be fantastic. Like if you can just describe a maculopapule, like you're already like better than I was when I was like an away rotator. So the rest is really kind of like your personality and kind of like how you are as a person. And so the first 2 years really just focus on having a good base so that you're able to then in your third and fourth year kind of shine, I'd say.
That's good advice. So, what advice do you have for medical students that are third, fourth years when picking a residency? What factors are important?
I think biggest thing is kind of I'd write maybe down like if you're like someone who likes to write down on paper just like things that you find important to you. If family is really important, prioritize that. If that means you go to a program that's a community program, then so be it. I think only you can really answer like what you find important. I think also in terms of if you're someone who's interested in a fellowship, it'd be really nice to go to a derm residency that has it as a fellowship. So I know that a lot of people into our program were interested in Mohs, and we have a Mohs ship. So most places will actually take their home derm resident, and the only reason for that is just they know them. It's kind of like how home students are picked over like regular way rotators. So I think that in general is like how I would like set it as what are my hard like no negotiating priorities. And then after that, it's like then within negotiating, it's like, do I want somewhere with a fellowship? Do I want somewhere that's a little bit because going to a big academic center is great, but then you have a lot of these specialized clinics where is that what you want to do in your future? Do you want to have a little room derm clinic, or do you want more general? If you want more general, you might want to go to like a program that kind of breeds more of that, if that makes sense. So I think like that is only the person can answer what they want out of their residency.
That's great
And I would say
advice.
it's also okay to not know. Like, I would say that it's also okay if you have no freaking idea what kind of derm you want to be. If you just want to be a derm, like that is totally fine and you'll figure it out. And even though like programs will harp on their differences and this is what makes us better, this is what makes us set us apart. At the end of the day, you're gonna be a dermatologist. Like that's freaking amazing. So you'll whatever program you're thrive, plant yourself there and just like do well there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's great advice. Well, that was, I guess, my last question. I'd like to thank you so much for being willing to come on the show and take your time, busy time as a resident to interview and tell us a little bit more about your program. Anything else we missed that you'd like to mention?
Um, no, I don't think so. I think you did a great job, Jake, of asking all the questions. And I wish you the very best through your career through dermatology. And I'm always open for any questions if you guys have any further questions, if you get reached out to about that, like I'm happy to answer.
Sounds good.